Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to meet a pioneer in the world of AI. He's at the cutting edge of generative AI, using it to transform marketing and business. With GoCharlie, he and his team have created the first multimodal generative content engine purpose-built for marketing. GoCharlie has taken the world by storm, hitting #1 on Product Hunt not just once, but twice. Brennan has a relentless spirit needed for leading a startup. He's a supportive mentor and he's a great community manager, as demonstrated by the passionate and engaged GoCharlie fans on the company's Facebook group, all 1,700 of them, I believe. Brennan has assembled a world-class team of AI experts to bring GoCharlie to life, and he's been an advisor to countless startups, always happy to pay it forward. At his core, Brennan is an innovator driven by creativity and human connection. He believes AI should empower people, not replace them. It's this unique blend of tech expertise and emotional IQ that makes him such an interesting person to speak to today. So get ready for an enlightening and entertaining chat with the one and only Brennan Woodruff, co-founder and chief business officer at GoCharlie.
Wow. Quite the introduction. I would love if you were able to introduce me for every event. That was fantastic, Martin. Thank you for such a in-depth discussion. All the things that you hope that people say about you coming to life. This is awesome.
What can I say? You've got a good LinkedIn profile.
Charlie may have helped with some of those things.
Yeah, well, it's you've got to practice what you preach, hey, on that. So I mentioned the Facebook group. That's one of the places where we've engaged a lot. That's a great little resource that you've built out there.
Yeah, it's I think early days with a startup, the biggest problem you can have is not talking to customers, not engaging with customers. And so fortunately for us, Facebook ended up being a great community. We've seen a lot of AI companies go the route of Discord. I don't know if there's any gamers listening to this, but Discord kind of reminds me of Unreal Tournament versus like the Halo that is using Slack, and Slack's a little more my speed, Facebook community a little more my speed. Unreal Tournament is just way beyond my speed. So we've been fortunate enough to have customers that want to share feedback, want to share with other customers, and it's just been a big part of our ethos since we started.
Right. No, it does seem like there's some good ideas and inspiration. I see lots of people giving feedback, and you're always asking for it as well. So I feel like I've jumped ahead there, maybe just a little bit. In the introduction, I mentioned GoCharlie. So can you give us an overview of what GoCharlie is for anyone that hasn't come across it?
Yeah, so GoCharlie is a generative AI platform for creating top quality marketing content. We have sort of a thesis on what makes perfect content. It's a combination of a language model purpose-built for the things that you need it to do, combined with a brand voice engine, a knowledge of your products, a knowledge of your competitive landscape, and then the target audience platform that you're planning to post to, and a couple other special ingredients. But for us, we tried to build that into a subscription-based product so that people could ultimately grow their business and pursue their dreams. Both my parents were entrepreneurs themselves, and so I saw firsthand the impact that relationship-driven businesses took when everything moved to digital. And so I wanted to give tools to my parents that they could use to market their own business, and that's where we really got the idea for GoCharlie.
So it's very much focused then on the marketing and kind of business content production, and this isn't a fluffy, I'm sure it can write poems, but this is focused on the business user.
For now, yes. I increasingly think that SMBs, even creators, even the everyday person is going to have to know how to create content to market themselves on the internet. So while I think B2B kind of fits the construct of what we sort of view as who our target customer would be, I think that second B is becoming a lot more blurred with C, if you know the B2C versus B2B comparison. But it's definitely more tailored towards marketers that need a more advanced tool. But I do think with some of the AI models coming online that you'll start to see us being able to do some of those more creative works, such as poems or my personal favorite, dad jokes and dog puns.
Yes, yeah, you do love a dog pun. Of course. What's the story behind the name Charlie and the mascot?
Yeah, so Charlie is well, maybe a fun fact for listeners. So originally the company was called Gaudium.ai. And I'm going to be honest with you, most of you probably couldn't pronounce Gaudium. I couldn't pronounce Gaudium. Everyone that we got on the phone call with was like Gaudium. And then more importantly, no one could spell it, right? So that was the other big piece of this. And we kind of took that away, and we were like, well, we've been calling our AI model Charlie. And then I was like, should we just call the company Charlie? Like, GoCharlie, like literally you're telling your dog to go do something. It's kind of like you're telling your AI to go do something. It's fun. It feels magical. You're telling your dog to go do something, same way as AI model. And so Charlie was actually the name of Costas, my co-founder's dog. So there's a real Charlie, which we sometimes occasionally share content about in the Facebook group. But that really gave birth to this new age AI puppy that many people think we're selling instead of actual content generation capabilities.
Yeah. Well, I saw that you were asking for a few months ago on LinkedIn, asking if there was any AI animated tools that you could get to animate the dog. And I did think at the time, oh, that's a nice play, but yeah, people are going to start thinking you're a character.ai before long.
Yeah, I've actually went back and forth with our newly hired CMO about like gifts that I want to give to early customers and investors. And I was like, we should do a dog collar so people can talk and show like the dog collar on their dogs. And she's like, we're not a dog company. We are a MarTech company. We're an AI company that just happens to have a dog mascot. And I was like, okay, fine. But you know, if we get enough puppy lovers, maybe the Charlie dog collars will come. We'll see.
Let's not write it out. I expect to see it at MarTech conferences around the world. Who needs a laptop sticker when they can walk around with their dog collars? You mentioned there your co-founders and the team behind it. So who are the brains behind GoCharlie then? What are their roles?
Yeah, so we had a 4-person founding team, which I know is a little larger than most these days, but just some huge technical firepower. So Kostas Hatalis is our CEO, AI PhD, 10 years of applied AI experience, was one of the fathers of probabilistic forecasting neural networks, which ultimately was what transformers are based off of. So he's wicked. He's built pretty much our AI from the ground up. And then we paired him with Despina Christou, who's our chief AI scientist. I regularly refer to her as Wonder Woman. She's built NLP solutions for Oracle and Fortune 500 companies, and has really been tasked with bringing Charlie to life in the AWS ecosystem as well. So 20 years of applied AI experience. And then we have a 4-time founder, CTO, Ryan Carlton, who basically built the product experience from the ground up by himself, which we have a very advanced product capability wise. And so the fact that he was able to do that on his own, front end, back end, everything is incredible. So I'm just the lucky guy that gets to talk about all these amazing people, try to sell the product, try to get partnerships, try to fundraise. And I was previously at SoftBank and Uber's autonomous vehicle group before that. So we have a pretty good team of AI expertise, I would say. And now we're really starting to flex that technical muscle over the next year, I would say.
Yeah, and that is there are some credentials there worth paying attention to for sure. On the technical things to come, I'm really interested in what you've done and what you've been talking about. So you've got kind of a secret sauce, haven't you, over at GoCharlie, and your marketing focused LLM that is yours from the ground up. Am I right have I understood that correctly?
Yeah. So we have taken a slightly different approach. There's a lot of people trying to do AI for marketing. I won't go too far into my thought about app layer until maybe a later question that we'll probably get into, but app layer versus model layer. But we felt that at the onset, we always wanted to create AI that was useful and valuable. And for us, that meant creating an AI that could serve as the foundation for the rest of our product suite. And so in the early days, GoCharlie was a collection of models. So we had some OpenAI, we had some of our own image recognition, computer vision, image creation, and now we're consolidating that down into just our own product suite. So we have Charlie, the large language model. We're also in active development on a multimodal model. So that'll be text and image in, text and image out. That's with SRI International, the guys that develop Siri, which is pretty cool. Like the fact that those guys are in with us is pretty awesome for this guy from Evansville, Indiana. And then we're also releasing a Charlie the Agent, which is kind of an AI brain that can sit on top of the large language model and multimodal capabilities, as well as additional API tooling. So giving you the ability to execute across a number of thousands of tools and capabilities and tasks, all with a few simple words. So yeah, that's kind of what we have on the technical horizon, but the large language model itself has been pretty amazing. We have like a blind user test, like kind of like a Coke versus Pepsi test, which I think you may have even gotten to try, which is like you put a prompt in and you get a prompt, or you get an output from Charlie and another state-of-the-art model. And we're winning over 85% of those tests, which is just truly exceptional given the size of the team we have relative to some of these other state-of-the-art models. So yeah, we're excited. That's hopefully going to be live to the public here soon via API. So even more fun to be had with Charlie.
Yeah, and that the ability to do the test, is that publicly available? Can listeners go and play with that?
Yeah, we
right
have a playground. We opened it up to the public, so you don't have to necessarily be a Charlie customer, although we would love for you to be using the software product as well. I think for me, one of the fascinating things with the playground was just understanding the step up in the value of having the software layer. And I know you've probably experienced this yourself. You go to OpenAI's ChatGPT, like that's pretty close to a raw model part. But then you have apps like Jasper, where they've been very successful building on top of those models. And so you go into a raw playground and you're like, oh, well, I wanted to do this, or why can't I export, or why can't I do that? And it's like, okay, well, that's a software solve. And so you start to think about like, how much value does the AI model in and of itself have? And then more interestingly, I think to both of us is like how that evolves. Like, can the AI model be truly the entire product, or do you need a combination of software plus AI? And I think the answer is the latter, but interesting thought exercise.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we actually see that in the way that ChatGPT in and of itself came about, didn't we? You know, the large language models, or the underlying model behind ChatGPT back in November, November 1st, you could use GPT-3. You could use it and you could build on it and you could access the model and play with it.
Yeah.
But nobody did. I say, quote unquote, nobody did. November 30th, or, end of December, everybody did.
Yeah.
And it was because it was suddenly as easy as using WhatsApp or using, whatever, Facebook Messenger. But like you say, it still is very much it's the closest thing you can get to having that raw model interaction that most people would want to use. Send people to playground.openai.com and show somebody a top P setting and watch them panic slightly as they go, I don't know what it does. And other people say to them, no, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I'll just move the temperature one. And
yeah, and you find that some of these early adopters, they're like hardcore coders. Like they want to get into the technical weeds. Like I think mass adoption for these tools, like it has to be super simple. Like prompting, I think is going to have to go the way of like obsolete, and it's just going to have to feel like you're talking to a friend. But like there's some people that really want to get into the technical weeds in the early adoption side of things. They're like, how do I change this scalar, and how do I do this? And that was something that is us building towards mass adoption was an interesting part. You might be building bells and whistles for these early adopters that the masses don't really care about.
Yeah, very much so. And actually would find actively off-putting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found, when you see tools like Microsoft Copilot, and you see the video and how easy that promises it's going to make kind of classic office productivity, and how it promises to do all of that. Even that is going to have to be incredibly simple. Like you talked there about prompting, like users like my mother, who has had an office job all of her life. She knows how to use Excel. She knows how to use Microsoft Word and Outlook and all of that. Right? But does she want to learn how to craft a prompt in order to get her spreadsheet to do the thing that she's been doing by clicking here, 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 and here? You know, people might say, well, it will save you 20 clicks. Yeah, but 20 clicks is fine if you know the 20 clicks. Like having to sit there and be like, oh God, it's not quite doing it. Now I've got to, maybe if I if I do chain of thought prompting, I can get it to make me a pivot table. No, I can just click on it and it will make me a bloody pivot table.
Yeah, it's like, are we? I asked my team this question quite a bit, which is like, are we literally spending a bunch of money and time and resources to get a 5% incremental improvement on this experience? Like, it would be great if this AI model could make a perfect image on the first try, but if it doesn't, I'm throwing that image out or I'm giving a different prompt. If the AI screws up my data table, like, I'm definitely not coming back to that. And I think we're just this iteration or two away from the AI actually being able to do it with any sort of reliability. But it always sucks when you see like the really posh demo video and then you get into the product experience. It is just nothing like it whatsoever. It's basically like the internet games you see advertised all the time where they look really cool in the video and then you start playing, you're like, this is awful.
Yeah, it's the promised land versus the actual reality. I mean, we had a similar thing actually. Me and Paul were talking on the show recently about Code Interpreter and how he stuck a bunch of data into Code Interpreter. It was some data about a client project, and he was trying to get it to analyze. Oh no, it wasn't that. It was timesheets within his agency, and tried to analyze, you know, profitable jobs versus non-profitable jobs and utilization rates and all of that. And he has this already, so he knows the data, and that's why he was using it on a data set that he was familiar with to see if it matched what it told him. And on several occasions, it was just wrong. It's like straight up hallucinated, made up stuff. And you don't have to do that many times before you just like, well, I'm just not going to bother.
If autonomous self-driving vehicles had the level of reliability that people are hawking generative AI software at, we would never have autonomous driving vehicles.
No, ever. It would absolutely not.
In like that, like we were talking about this before the podcast. Like, that influences where you can actually put AI into service in your organization. Like, and I even get there with many customers where it's like, maybe a rules-based solution is what you need. Maybe you don't need a massive generative AI model to create these personalized emails where only 3 sentences are personalized. Maybe that's just not the thing to do. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see it play out. I think some of that hype is already going away, but like, even on a personal basis, Code Interpreter scared the hell out of me from its functionality suite, because it is very impressive, some of the things I've seen it do, but reliability is just such a problem in this space, even from the people that are the best at it.
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting that you talk there about, you know, a rules-based approach. I had a client approach me recently, wanted to bring me in on an AI project. They were halfway through this kind of change management piece and wanted to introduce some AI. And they were very keen to introduce some AI. I should reiterate this. They were really keen to introduce some AI. And when I sat down with them, they didn't need AI. They needed some fairly simple marketing automation, you know, kind of standard workflow stuff that you would build in a HubSpot campaign, you know, just some rules-based systems. It was, but because AI is everywhere, I think it's blinded people to the solutions that are really well established and work really quite well.
Yeah, I think it all gets back to that perception thing. Like, most people's perception, even in the business world, of what AI is all based off of Hollywood. And like, that's the narrative that the media has picked up too, is like mass labor replacement. It's like, no, it's not there yet. It could potentially get there, but it's I think that we're going to kind of see a cooling off of the hype cycle as people start to see that a little bit.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Now, I said in the intro, you've just said something that's quite interesting about the Hollywood, the kind of jobs replacement. And I said in the intro that you believe AI should empower people and not replace them. So, give me that use case then. I'm a business owner. I'm looking for an AI solution. How am I going to turn to GoCharlie in its present form? What's it going to do for me? Give me those use cases that your customers are finding really powerful.
Yeah, so I think our platform has been built flexible enough to where at different life cycles of the company, it can have different value levers. We actually did a session for SF Tech Week that was AI-driven content creation, and so we literally went through the life cycle of a company. So I asked, like, who in the audience wants to start a company, hasn't really put pen to paper on it? Person raised their hand, they came up. We created the name for the company, we created a brand profile, we created the channels that they should address first, and then the first couple pieces of content for that. And then we kind of moved up the maturity cycle into a company that already had a website and was already starting to sell some product. And for them, it's more just about growth and continuing to tell consistent messaging across platforms. So we moved from foundational to growth stage. And from there, we were able to create a bunch of content purely based off their website, work they had already done, pen they had already put to paper, and turn that into several social media campaigns. So they can now become omni-channel with their growth strategy. And then I think for the more later stage companies where they have a new product launch, we see it being more that assistant of telling that message across a number of different channels, helping you with your SEO, helping you really just 10x, 100x the content that you might have been putting out there with the same team using GoCharlie. Our primary focus has mostly been on SEO as well as social media content creation. But I think we have a very interesting suite called content repurposing, which is a bit of a mouthful, but my thinking there is, like, it allows you to create with anything as source material. It allows you to use videos, talks that you've given, blogs, maybe even co-write with people that you respect their own thought leadership on. And so we've given you those tools. So it no longer becomes just a, hey, we're helping you market. It also helps you establish authority. And so for those businesses just starting out, I think that's the way we think about it.
Content repurposer, or whatever the product is called. That's every time I've shown that to people, and I've shown that to dozens of businesses now at various workshops, specifically the video. So they're just throwing in a YouTube link and going, write me a blog.
Yep.
And watching people's response, because they are so skeptical, and the quality of it is good. You know, as with any AI, I would always encourage people to make edits, make it your own. But for a first draft, what it gives you is like, wow, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I think that product itself is testament to, when you put some of these models together, you start to get some really insane workflow productivity benefits, like content repurposing. Even just the workflow you were talking about, going from a YouTube video to a blog. In the past, you would have to use a transcription service to transcribe it. Then you would have to go review that transcription and make sure that it was accurate. Then you would have to take that and summarize it into the main points. Then you would have to take those main points and determine what content you wanted to make from that. We're just doing that all in one step. And then even in a couple other clicks, you can go from having a blog to having a blog and social media campaign, having some thought leadership posts for social. So now you're actually extending the life of your content over a much longer period of time by just backlinking through additional pieces that all draw off the same source material. So I think models working together is going to be a trend that we start to see a lot more in the future.
I certainly see that in the way that I'm playing with certain tools as well. I'm using Zapier to build workflows using things like transcription tools. So, the Whisper API and sticking real-time content into there and having it throw into my Google Drive a summarization of the meeting that I was just at, or what have you. In fact, I went to a talk the other day. It was back, just got back home from the Macon conference. There was a local talk. There's some project going on in the city that I live in Derby. And I recorded that and just stuck it straight up to Whisper and got it to spit out a nice little summary of the whole session with the key points and next steps and ideas for how I could get involved. And I thought that's just, just a really neat way of bringing these different models together. Yeah.
I gotta ask, since you mentioned, who's your football club?
The mighty Derby County.
Oh, wow.
We're sitting all the way in League One at the moment, having been relegated from the Premier League in 2008 with the lowest points total in history. We scored 11 points and won one game all season.
Hey, being memorable is always something worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
I'm personally a Spurs fan, but they seem poised to never return to Champions League glory.
Yeah, it's and you look like you're about to lose Harry Kane as well to the Bayern Munich.
I know. I used to slick my hair back like his, and people would call me Harry Kane. I like to think I'm a little more distinguished now, but that's just me.
If you haven't seen it, in the past week or two, he just did an episode on Hot Ones on First Week.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth a watch.
Yeah, hopefully my AI ambitions take me somewhere near sports at some point, but we'll see.
Are you much of a baseball fan?
No, I'm a basketball fan. If there's any Hoosiers listening, I'm an Indiana Hoosier. So basketball is my jam. Baseball, I enjoy going to a game every now and again, but basketball is definitely me.
I always try and catch a major league game when I'm over in the States, but unfortunately, flight cancellations this year scuppered me from seeing the Guardians, which was a shame.
All right, we'll have to have you back over when I'm back in San Francisco, and we can do a Giants game.
Do a Giants game, yeah. I'd be definitely up for that. So let's get back on topic. I'm interested. You're building an AI startup. I'm guessing that it's not all roses all of the time. Talk me through some of the challenges of this business.
Yeah, I think there's some that are unique to us, and there's some that are unique to the space. And so I won't spend as much time on the unique to us because maybe they won't be as relevant for the listeners. But I think just being first-time founders, regardless of our pedigree, I think works against you in a space that many people expected rightfully that incumbents would start to move into once the dam sort of broke of getting these products out there. I think another is just when you're starting out, like usually it takes a couple years before you're kind of like, all right, this is the idea, this is the identity we're going to be. And we kind of shot out of the gate with one idea of what we were going to be. But then as the space just took off, you might find that initial focal area is not the area you want to spend long-term time in. So that's definitely been a difficult spot for us. Is just how do you steer the ship and have some sort of clear idea of where you're going as the space is constantly evolving and more players are coming in. Now, being in the AI space itself it's fascinating. It's frustrating. It's definitely not all roses, as you mentioned. You have big players releasing models and spending money in a way that you will never be able to as a startup. You have startups that had a couple years head start and a much better go-to-market motion. Like I respect the hell out of Jasper for what they were able to accomplish so quickly before many weren't even knowledgeable about the space. And I think they will continue to be a player, but much like us, we're still figuring out like how do you play alongside these large incumbents and get them championed to your cause. I think the other thing is just like we're a remote-based team. That's always fun. And then I think you're kind of going through this pandemic transition into more people wanting to be back in person. And so a lot more business is being done in person. And how do you change your startup's capital spend when you need to incorporate travel a little bit more and what comes off the books versus that? But the AI space it's troublesome. I think it's got a lot of the same risk though that you might have with being a retailer that's selling on Amazon, right? Like a retailer selling on Amazon always runs the inherent risk that you might get copied and become a commodity good for Amazon, and they might start selling your product at a lower price. Same way with AWS's cloud, same way with Google's cloud, same way with Microsoft's cloud. They all have their own models that they're hawking. So like, how do you get them bought into your cause so that you can build on top of these behemoths worth of infrastructure? I actually think that's largely why Inflection and OpenAI are starting to build their own infrastructure, because they're realizing the power of these cloud providers, and they don't want to be a part of that. Remains to be seen how that will work out long term. But I think the other piece is just like, there's so much noise. There's so many celebrity founders that are getting funded by their larger VC friends that they've cultivated over years. They've cultivated this image over year. We're a relatively new kid on the block, and so in that regard, you have to like make a lot of noise in a new way. And there's a lot more expectations. You have to like pull off the 100x. You can't get away with the 10x. Like the celebrity founder doing 10x is going to be able to pull off a huge round. The relatively unknown founder is going to have to pull off 100x to really make noise and get the funding. So I think it's just like keeping yourself mentally stable in an area of so much noise and just keeping that determination going. I know that's a lot more psychologically driven than like how hard it is to play in the AI space, but I think that's for me been more a part of it than just like being in the AI space.
I think there is something to startup life which requires that resilience of mind, and it's not a space that I want to play in. So hats off to all of you that are living in it day to day.
Yeah. It's all fun and games until you get a nasty gram from a customer at 3 a.m. and you're like, I just want to respond really meanly to this, but like, that's just not business. You have to take it as like, they cared enough to send this to me. Even though I don't like what it says, they cared enough to send it to me.
Yeah. Customers, hey, who'd have them?
Yeah.
Looking for that immortal revenue model with zero humans, but still revenue. Oh no, I'm a people person, Brennan, honest. So you spoke there about customers. Are there any particular areas standouts where you think, or case studies that you can share of people that have used the product and come to you with some really amazing eye-opening use cases and they've killed it?
Yeah, it's there's a bunch of these. There's one moment that I always distinctly remember that like really, I don't know that I could say that it cemented my decision as being right to jump from SoftBank into a pre-revenue startup, but it certainly made me feel like it was the right decision. And that was the first time that we released the first iteration of content repurposing. We were the first ones that have like YouTube to anything. And I distinctly remember there was a customer in our chat or in Facebook community, and they simply responded, I was paying an agency $1,400 a month to do this, and you guys are now doing this for a simple monthly price, and I can do this for all the content. And right there, I was just like, one, that's the firepower of AI, but two, like they can now invest that $1,400 a month into their business, into making their dreams come true. Like that for me was like, this is the thing. This is a bigger dopamine rush than anything else. I think I saw a lot of people. So we even still have this. So we have like a chat-based experience, but we also have a template-based experience. And then we have an image generation experience. And so I started to see people doing some really interesting stuff where they would prompt the chat to describe a visual for an idea they were working on, and then feed that into the image generation model. And so we started to think, how can we just bring the image creation part right into that experience natively? And so you see that with the next iteration of the product. But I think using the models in collaboration is where I started to see the really mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, again, I think in fact, actually, Cassie Kozakov, is that how you pronounce her name? The chief decision scientist over at Google. She was keynoting at the Macon conference last week, and her whole talk was that this isn't an AI revolution that we're going through now. This is a design revolution. Like, this is all about design, and designing workflows and designing systems and processes and taking things from A to B to C. Effectively, recipes was the kind of analogy that she talked about. And I think that's true.
Jasper on that recipes.
Hers was actually more of a kitchen-based full work analogy, but no. I didn't speak to the Jasper team while I was there actually because they were exhibiting. But yeah, I think workflows is the thing, isn't it? Like, how do you that kind of multimodality, but also I've got this idea, I want to turn that into a thing. Give me a blog outline. Give me the blog outline into a blog with the social media post. That kind of one-click campaign. When people see that idea, that's great. You've spoken about the content repurposing. The steps involved in that are not as simple as watch YouTube video, make notes. If you're doing it manually, that is not the workflow. There are lots of steps to go through to get a blog post. And what you've done is you've managed to use AI and build a sequence of steps that does it all for you in one go.
Yeah. And what I think this is interesting, and I'm curious to explore this with you as well, is like, we talk about redesigning workflows. Funny enough, I still get people asking for the intermediate steps. Like, I have still never been able to get someone to give me a solid intellectual reason for what they use raw transcripts for. Like, without fail, no, every time someone mentions like, yeah, I can create transcripts with this, I'm like, cool. What do you do with those transcripts? And then they tell me, oh, we create summaries, or we create a blog post, or we create social media. And I'm like, so then what would be the point of having a transcript versus just those outputs? Like, why would you want it? And it boggles people's mind. They can't come up with it. But then, like, you extrapolate that idea out with this designing workflows situation we're in. What level of autonomy do you think people are willing to give to AI? Do we have to get to this like versioning setup with AI where you could see all those intermediate steps that are happening, almost like you would version changes in a Google Doc, for people to allow AI to have any sort of autonomy, much less full autonomy? And I think that's going to be the larger question we have to answer in this as we exit this design phase, is like, what are we willing to give up in this workflow?
Yeah, and that reminds me of Wired magazine, after ChatGPT came out and made all the headlines, they wrote an article. It was an editorial piece saying how they as a publisher are going to use generative AI, or how they will and won't use generative AI. And one of the things that they said in there was that for editing, they will not use generative AI because editing requires judgment. It requires human judgment to determine what is important and what requires the kind of weight and emphasis within a story, and that's not something that you can hand over to a bot or to an AI. And I think that's right. When again, I think it's one of the things, going back to your point about autonomous vehicles. Ultimately, that is the big question about autonomous vehicles, isn't it? Like, that's how much are you prepared to relinquish? The moment a bot-driven car kills a person, even though it might do it, 100 times less frequent than people en masse, people go, well, it made a decision and it ended up killing a person, so we can't trust it, even though it might fundamentally be safer.
I was literally my first week at Uber was when the autonomous vehicle hit that woman and killed her. And the ripples that sent through the company, as well as our long-term investment decisions in autonomous vehicles, like was rather massive. And I tried to think about this as well, because I'm like, people die in car accidents all the time, not to get too morbid, but like every day it happens. And the only reason I could get to is like, it's not news if someone dies in a normal car accident. It is news if someone dies in an autonomous vehicle car accident, and we can blame big tech for it. And I worry that we're getting into that same cycle with a lot of these AI systems, where we may end up limiting the utopia that could be delivered by some of these systems purely because we're just going to bury them with bad news stories.
Yeah, and this is where we need that balance, don't we? I mean, you see it actually in the news cycle recently. In fact, I've argued recently that for the likes of Sam Altman talking about the capabilities of AGI and how it could be a kind of destroyer of jobs, and it's okay. We've got a kill switch. We can turn it off at the wall if we need to. We can definitely do that. I think that's a really interesting piece of marketing hype. People want to buy your product if you're telling people that it's this close to becoming like it's gonna take over the world, and we're having to really rein it in and restrain it. Whereas you listen to other people in the field that are at the leading edge, and they're just like, no. that's not it.
Yeah, and then like, what even is the definition of AGI? I mean, we have a heavy discussion of marketing already. Like, I kind of think of AGI these days as like brand voice is for marketing. Like, every expert seems to have a different idea of what that is and what it constitutes. And anytime that you can't agree on what the definition of something is, then typically you're going to have people saying that they're already there. So I think we should, my hope is we adopt a uniform way of thinking about that evaluation. But
yeah, let's get to consensus on that one point alone, just that everybody recognizes it when they see it.
Yeah.
So this has been quite a broad ranging discussion. We should probably start wrapping it up soon, but I'm interested to know, you've talked about AI agents and that being something that you're developing internally. That excites me, when we can start to build tools or AIs that can use tools, and we see glimmers of this with the likes of Code Interpreter. We see glimmers of this with plugins and various other, Auto GPT, although I think that's probably wildly hyped. I don't think anybody's actually done anything useful with Auto GPT from what I can see so far. But going forward, when this can happen, like what does the future look like? And on from that, what do you hope the future looks like for customers of GoCharlie in, say, let's say 12 months time, when this landscape will be very different?
It's fascinating thing to think about. I'm in this like AI agents DM group on Twitter that has been eye-opening. And one of our board members actually, his name's Dustin Dannenhauer. He was one of the foremost thinkers on AI agents before this whole like LLM-based agent thing became a thing. I think agents is such an interesting topic because for those that don't know, agents is basically like it can execute a more complex task for you. But at its simplest, it's in an environment and is able to execute a task. So you might be able to think about a large language model and some of the things that it does is as an agent, a very simple agent, but an agent nonetheless that lives in an environment, it does a task for you. Now, if you think about agents is sort of we're thinking about what they constitute, like, we would theoretically want an agent where you say, hey, I would like you to research this topic, establish a stance on it, make a blog post about it, make a series of tweets that kind of carry that messaging through, add some images, and cite your sources. So that's like very complex. That would normally take one person maybe a week before AI. Now it might take a day or two with AI. We want it to do that whole thing all at once. So that's what we're kind of envisioning our agent product is doing, is like at your behest doing things. But then where it gets super interesting is over time it learns you. And so then the agent starts to become proactive. So then instead of saying, or instead of you coming into the product and prompting, it's coming to you and saying, hey, based upon your business, the competitive landscape, the industry that you're in, here's what we recommend you create content about this week. And we've already created some drafts. Do you want us to post this for you, or would you prefer to come in and edit more? So to me, agents are the bedrock of a more proactive AI system, more proactive assistant, a more real collaborator with your business. Now, if I think about like, where does that go in the future? First and foremost, I think that agents need to turn doorknobs. They don't need to be talking to in special languages to one another. I think that will probably come most likely, but I think the most successful agents will learn how to use existing tools, APIs, because that will garner mass adoption. If I could tell something from GoCharlie, create an email campaign and post it to my Klaviyo account, I'm going to use that tool versus one that has to have some special sort of coding to go and do it. So you need an agent to be able to turn doorknobs, not create code to make something happen. Longer term, I think that agents just become part of your company. I do think that because of AI, companies that are just starting will be smaller. I think that companies that are larger will get smaller or will do more. But I think also because of AI, those companies, when they make layoffs, you're going to have a lot more companies starting because you won't need as much. My hope for the future is that I could have an AI agent that basically runs a passive income side hustle for me. So I can go live on a beach in Mexico and paint at night. But like, I think we're a ways off from there. I think there's some regulatory concerns with that. But ultimately, I kind of view AI as like, at its best, it's a digital twin of your desires. You tell it what you want to be done, and it can go do it for you. That's kind of the future world that I think we're moving towards. But it all boils down to doing more with less.
So fast forward 18 months, GoCharlie agent is flying. You're sat on a beach living off the income from drop shipping .agent AI. Is that what I can expect to see?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a brilliant picture of agents, and I think that what you've touched on is that the bit that's easy to overlook with agents, because like I mentioned them. AI is being able to use tools and things like AutoGPT, being able to plug into an API and do something. But it's the proactive piece that I think is so often overlooked. Yeah. The idea that this is just running in the background, right? The thing that lots of people are probably thinking when they use the likes of ChatGPT for any amount of time, you use it for a month or so, and then you're thinking, oh, I wish it could just go and find this out for me now, when it's not available to you on you haven't got your phone to hand or whatever. If you've got an AI agent that's always there, just kind of dialed in, doing little jobs for you, doing research, finding out what the market conditions are like, saying, here's a blog post, here's a trending topic that you want to jump on the bandwagon of. If you've got that, I mean, that is an absolute game changer. If you're a marketing manager, marketing assistant, whatever. So, well, you painted an exciting picture there, Brennan.
Yeah, we were talking about workflow design. What if the best workflow is no workflow at all?
Oh, that is, if we can plug that in with the customerless revenue generation model, we're in, hit the dream ticket.
Then we'll both go retire and watch Giants baseball games and sit on the beach in Mexico. How about that?
I'm into it. Yeah, most definitely. So where can people find out more about GoCharlie?
Yeah, so our website, GoCharlie.ai. We are actually doing a phenomenal event. Not sure when this is going to air, but September 6th, we're throwing the AI party to celebrate the close of our $2 million pre-seed round, the launch of our large language model publicly, the launch of our agent product. We're going to sit down with some people from SRI and NVIDIA, as well as the CEO of Hawk Media and some other people on the future of AI marketing as well. So definitely check us out there. But you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. GoCharlie AI is the handle. We didn't do anything too fun with it. We make the content fun, not our handles. But then me personally, just Brennan Woodruff on LinkedIn. I love hearing from customers, love hearing from AI enthusiasts. Pretty active in the site community. So just shoot me a note.
And in terms of signing up, what are the plans to start from? Have you got a free plan, free trial, Teams plan? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have 3 tiers, but we also have a free tier. So we just recently made a free tier available. We want everybody to benefit from AI. It helps us improve the product. And so there's some limited usage on a monthly basis. And then as your business scales and you need more advanced content throughput, we have a freelancer tier, then we have a professional tier. Those are both single seat options. One is limited use of the platform, one is full use. And then we have a Teams tier for agencies, enterprises, and beyond. That's a 5-seat plan. So those will evolve over time pricing wise, but yeah, we have flavors for everybody in every walk of your business.
Great. Well, as a user of GoCharlie, I would encourage people to go and check it out. It was the tool of the week very early on in the podcast. So if people want to hear my thoughts on it, they can go check that out. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Of course, Martin, it's always a pleasure, my man. We got to do this more often.
Cheers.